So let us now discuss all these internal physiological systems in detail. So first we start with the digestive system. So the digestive system of Herdmania is a complete digestive system. It starts with the bronchial aperture. So this bronchial aperture is also known as mouth, and this alimentary canal ends with anus. So it starts with mouth and it ends with anus, so that's why this kind of digestive system is called a complete type of digestive system. In alimentary canal we see so many parts. So anteriorly it starts with the mouth, then buccal cavity is present. After to buccal cavity the pharynx is present. So the pharynx is the largest part. Pharynx is present next to buccal cavity. So after to this pharynx the esophagus is present. So esophagus is the fourth anatomical part of digestive system. So this is very short tube. Then stomach is present behind this esophagus. After stomach, intestine is present, and intestine opens into the rectum. And the last part of the digestive system is the rectum, and this rectum opens into atrium or cloaca by this anus. So these are the anatomical structures that we observe in the digestive system. So mouth is present in the bronchial aperture, and this mouth opens into the buccal cavity. This buccal cavity is very short and narrow cavity that present in the bronchial siphon. It is very short and narrow cavity. Near to base of this buccal cavity a sphincter is present, and this sphincter wall is made up of the muscles. So the contractions and relaxation of this sphincter wall regulates the opening and closing of this mouth in the anterior part of digestive system. Also at the base of its this sphincter we observe some tentacles, so which are directed to inward. So all these tentacles they form some lattice structure inside of this sphincter, and so that the larger particles cannot enter into the alimentary canal, so they cannot pass through this sphincter. Only the small size particles or small size food molecules can pass through this sphincter. So the tentacles of the sphincter allows only the smaller particles, and doesn't allow the larger particles. Then the next part is the pharynx. This is the largest part of the alimentary canal, and this pharynx has two parts. The anterior part is called pre-bronchial zone, and posterior part is called the bronchial sac. So the anterior part is pre-bronchial zone, and posterior part is called the bronchial sac. This pre-bronchial zone is a very small part of the pharynx and doesn't have the gill slits, and the walls of this pre-bronchial zone is very smooth without any folds. So we don't observe any folds in the walls of this pre-bronchial zone. It's very short tube, and it doesn't have any gill slits on its wall. So it is very smooth wall without any folds. So this short part of pre-bronchial zone is completely separated with the posterior bronchial sac. So the bronchial sac and this is are completely they are separated. Two ridges are present between these two. So these two ridges separates them from each other. So in these two ridges, the first ridge is called the anterior band, and the second ridge is called the posterior band. So the anterior peripharyngeal band and the posterior peripharyngeal band. So these two anterior peripharyngeal band and posterior peripharyngeal band, so these two bands, so this is how we see two ridges. So these two ridges they are having a groove in between them. So the first ridge and this is the second ridge. So these two ridges in between they have one groove. So this groove is called peripharyngeal groove. Then cilia is present in this groove and also in the ridges. So in the first ridge and second ridge cilia is present also in this peripharyngeal groove, but the cilia which is present in this peripharyngeal groove is very small, but the cilia that is present in the ridges is very large. The another important structure that present in the pre-bronchial zone is a dorsal tubercles, and this dorsal tubercle is present in front of this peripharyngeal band. On the dorsal wall of this pre-bronchial zone, this dorsal tubercle is present. So here we see the dorsal tubercle. So this is present in front of the first peripharyngeal band. So posterior to this second peripharyngeal band, branchial sac continues. In the branchial sac and its dorsal wall we observe dorsal lamina, and on ventral wall we observe endostyle. So endostyle is present on the ventral wall, and dorsal wall has dorsal lamina. So dorsal lamina is present in the branchial sac, but dorsal tubercle is present in the prebranchial zone. So prebranchial zone has only one important structure, but this branchial sac has two important structures on its dorsal wall and on ventral wall. Also on its lateral walls we observe gill slits along with this dorsal lamina and also the endostyle. Let me draw the pharynx region with two parts. The anterior part is called prebranchial zone and the posterior part is called branchial sac. So the branchial sac is the largest part, and this prebranchial zone is the smallest part. And this prebranchial zone and this branchial sac, they are separated by the two ridges. So two ridges are present, and these two ridges are separated by S groove. So the first band is called the anterior peripharyngeal band, and second one is called posterior peripharyngeal band. So this is the second band and this is the first band. Then on the dorsal surface of this prebranchial zone, dorsal tubercle is present, which is present on the dorsal part of this prebranchial zone. It is a very smooth wall, it doesn't have any folds and all in its internal surface. But the second part of the pharynx, that is called branchial sac, this branchial sac has folds on its inner surface, and it has two parts in its internal surface. They are very important. One is present on the dorsal side or the roof part of the pharynx, and another one is present on the ventral part or the floor part of the pharynx. The dorsal one is called dorsal lamina, and the ventral side the part is called the endostyle. The lateral walls of this pharynx has structures, they are called gill slits. So the vertical slits are present, so and these vertical slits are called gill slits. So these are the structures that we observe in the prebranchial zone and in the branchial sac. Also in the inner walls of this branchial sac we see some foldings. So we see some longitudinal foldings along the length of this branchial sac. So all these internal foldings, longitudinal foldings, they increase the surface of this pharynx region. So these structures are called trabeculae. So the dorsal wall has a folding, that folding is called dorsal lamina, but the longitudinal foldings of the inner walls are called trabeculae, and the ventral part or the ventral wall has a folding that is called endostyle. From the dorsal lamina we see some hangings. So all these hangings they form a conduction tube between this pharynx and esophagus. So all these hangings we can observe from this anterior part of the pharynx to the utmost anterior part of the esophagus. So the next part is called esophagus. So up to that esophagus region we see this dorsal lamina, and this dorsal lamina has hanging structures, and all these hanging structures have cilia on their border. So all these cilia with these hangings, they form a conducting tube between the pharynx and esophagus. Then this endostyle has ciliated cells, also the mucus cells. So these ciliated cells and mucus cells, they are arranged in a longitudinal rows, and the mucus cells, they secrete mucus, and that mucus helps to trap the food particles. Cilia helps to push the food particles from this pharynx region to the esophagus. The next anatomical part of the digestive system is esophagus. This esophagus is a very short tube. We can see here this very short and curved tube. It opens into the stomach. This stomach is somewhat wider than this esophagus region. Also it is bigger than the esophagus region. On either side of the stomach we see the liver lobes, right liver lobe and the left liver lobe. Next the stomach opens into the intestine. This intestine is a U-shaped structure. In this intestine we see two limbs. This is a proximal limb and this is the distal limb, and the distal limb of the intestine opens into the rectum. And inside of this intestine loop, so inside of this intestine loop the left gonad is present. this proximal limb and distal limb are formed because of this U-shaped loop, and inside of this U-shaped loop we observe the left gonad in the internal anatomy of urochordate. Then the rectum is the terminal part of the digestive system, and it opens into atrium by anus. Then that atrium opens outside of the body through the atrium, which is present on the atrial siphon. So this is how the digestive system of adult urochordate is present. So next let us see the respiratory system of the adult urochordate. The respiration is performed by the gill slits, and these gill slits are present in the posterior part of the pharynx region. So we know that pharynx has two parts. They are called prebronchial zone and bronchial sac. So prebronchial zone and bronchial sac, two structures are present. So prebronchial zone is the anterior part. So this anterior part doesn't have any gill slits. The bronchial sac has the gill slits. So numerous number of gill slits are present in the adult Herdmania. Water enters into the body through bronchial pore. So from this bronchial pore, water enters into the buccal cavity. So the bronchial pore is also called the mouth. So from mouth, water enters into the buccal cavity. From buccal cavity, then it enters into the prebronchial zone of the pharynx, then the bronchial sac of the pharynx. So the lateral walls of the bronchial sac has the gill slits. When water flows over these bronchial slits, we can observe the exchange of gases between the blood and the water. So this is how the respiration takes place in the adult Herdmania. So besides this gill slits, there are other organs present for respiration in Herdmania. There are called vascular trabeculae. So vascular trabeculae, they are present in the atrium. So they also involve in the respiration. Also some level of respiration is performed by the body test material. So the body test can also act as a respiratory organ, so because it contains the vascular ampullae and the blood vessels, so we can observe some sort of respiration performed by the test of the body. So this is how respiration takes place in the body. Next let us see the circulatory system of the body.